Hello there, I am Richie Stormtrooper. Welcome to my channel. This is my little space on the web dedicated to costume building. In this case we are looking at the Stormtrooper costume from the original Star Wars movie Episode 4 or A New Hope, whatever you want to call it. This first tutorial video I have called it Getting Started. It's a brief overview of what you will need to get started. I will be providing you with an overview of my little workstation and some of the tools, the main tools I'm going to be using for trimming and assembly, the main things I need to put the armor together. But before we do get started, if you find the video interesting, please do like and subscribe. I will be back with more tutorials. I have a full set of armor here and I'm going to be putting that together over the next couple of weeks. I will be posting videos about my progress. I'll be taking you through the build process step by step and turning those videos into some kind of tutorial. This first video then is a quick overview of what you will need to get started. We have already had a look at the armor parts themselves. If you want to go back to this to see that video before you go further, there is a link to that here. So we have our breakdown of components, and now before we actually get on to building the armor, we're going to have a quick look at what you need. This overview of tools is not necessarily complete. I'm no doubt will along the way find various bits and bobs that I don't have here, but these are the main things you're going to need to get started. What I will do, I will post individual videos for building specific parts of the armor. So for instance, when we get round to building the forearms, I will do a separate video on building forearms, and then I will repeat a look at the tools that you need for that particular job. So we'll be adding to this collection, no doubt, but this is a good way to start out. The first thing we're going to be doing, obviously, is trimming the armor. We have our parts. They have been rough trimmed. These are off the molds and they've just been roughly cut out. They are not ready to be assembled as they are. They need to be trimmed further. You see these rough edges here on this thigh piece. These need to be trimmed down to the right size and the right look. We're going to be looking at original references. That's one very important part. Before we start talking about tools, I have my workstation set out. I have a small surface where I can work. You may have a proper workbench. I just have an improvised version of that. But probably the most important part of my workstation is here, my laptop. This is the way that I choose to store my photo references for my build. I have on my laptop all the pictures that I have gathered over the years, that I have put together a collection of visual references of original armor. It may be screen grabs from the movies, but it also may be photos from Lucasfilm archives of original armor that has been stored there. I can give you one important tip, and that is to join the forum at whitearmor.net. That's the first Imperial Stormtrooper detachment. That's the forum about Stormtrooper costuming, which is affiliated with the 501st Legion. It's open to everybody. You do not need to be a 501st Legion member, nor do you have to intend to become a member. The public area, the area that is open to everybody, contains a hell of a lot of very useful tips and information, including a huge reference library, which is where I got most of these photos from. Whatever you do when you're building, whether you're following my tutorials or following the advice of others, always make sure you have an original reference. I mean, a photo reference, a visual reference of an original suit that was used in the movie for each part, so that you have something original and real to copy. It's very possible that I will make a mistake, and if you are simply copying me, you're going to copy all my mistakes. So don't take my word for it. The best piece of advice that I can give you is to use original references and join the forum. So as I say, the first task we're going to have is going to be trimming this armor so that it is ready for the next stage, which is assembly. So we need some kind of cutting equipment. Now, I do most of my cutting with these two pieces of equipment, these two tools. These are a multi-purpose universal set of shears. These I got from the DIY store. hardware store. They're for cutting cables and all, multi-purpose, as I say, this is how they were advertised. They're good for the more rough work, lots of big straight lines. You can cut through the less intricate areas quickly and easily. But when it comes to some of the more intricate curved parts, I like to use these scissors. These are craft scissors for arts and crafts and for model making. They have a curved blade, which really helps when you are getting into those difficult places, like here on these biceps parts. These biceps parts I have already trimmed out, and I used largely these. I will post a link down below where you can get hold of some of these if you're not certain where you can get them. I find them very, very valuable. Now, of course, there will be a lot of you out there who are experienced with using a rotary cutting tool such as a Dremel. If you are happy using a Dremel, then go ahead. You can, no doubt, if you're skilled with it, you're adept with it, you can do this job just as well. There are some great rotary tools that are small, get into these nooks and crannies and give you a good finish. I do have a Dremel. I don't tend to use it for this. I actually do think a lot of the original suits were cut using something more like this carpet knife, similar to like a Stanley knife with the interchangeable blades, the throwaway blades. I use this every now and again for tidying up, cleaning up little areas. If I get kind of jaggedy edges, sometimes you start cutting from one side and cut from the other side, and where it crosses over, it's a little untidy. So I scrape it out with this. This is also great if you are planning to use a score and snap method. If you're cutting a long straight line, I would advise anybody using an open blade like this to always wear gloves, safety gloves. I don't tend to use this that often, only for little minor cleaning up work. But as I say, if you're using this to score with, you can get good fast results if you want a perfect straight line. I have a wooden ruler here. I would advise you get a good steel ruler for scoring. It can be very useful as well. You'll need a pencil. In the next video, following this video, I'll be looking at trimming in general, how to go about trimming, and I'll show you how we'll be marking out the parts before we cut them. But that's another video for another day. It will be the video following this one. After the trimming stage, then obviously we are going to be at the assembly stage. We trim, we rough trim, then we fit and trim, and then we assemble. For assembly, we're going to need various items to hold the armor provisionally in place. I like to use these. These are from a general hardware store, like pretty much all the equipment I have here, because we're going to be wanting to hold various parts together temporarily while we glue them and fit them to the size of our limbs and our body, something along the lines of that. These kind of things, these plastic things, are reasonably priced and very useful. Also, as you can see, these are great for holding things at the edges. When it comes to reaching to these further areas in the middle, they're not quite enough. So I also use these. These are rare earth or neodyme, I believe, magnets. These are, as you can see, you probably appreciate, these are very, very strong magnets. These particular ones I have, I think, are 20 millimeters in diameter and about 3 millimeters thick. It's a good size to work with. It fits in all the areas that you're going to use them. 15 mil is also good. You can use square ones if you want. there are various ones available. Just search for rare earth magnets. You can see these are very strong magnets, and we're going to be using those for clamping parts together in those areas which are difficult to reach with clamps. So, one thing I don't have here, which I know I'm probably going to be using and finding useful, is some kind of adhesive tape. You want to get hold of a roll of adhesive tape which hasn't got a permanent adhesive, which is not going to leave adhesive residue. Something like masking tape that painters use is ideal. It allows you to temporarily hold parts together while you are fitting. For example, I can put a few strips of masking tape on the outside of here whilst I'm checking the exact size that I need. I can adjust it, make it smaller, make it tighter or wider as I need to, and then go in and clamp it ready for gluing. Which brings us on to our adhesives then. Obviously we need to glue these parts together, or indeed weld them together. I personally use a lot of plastic weld solvent. It specifically says it is suitable for ABS. It contains methylene chloride and dichloromethane, so quite nasty stuff. You want to use it, keep your room relatively well ventilated, otherwise you're going to get high and probably get some headaches. There is evidence from the original suits that they were put together with an adhesive, a solvent-based adhesive. There is residue on some of the inside of the parts. It's clear from the cover strips, for example, some of the joins that they were welded. You can see the plastic is actually fused together, it's not glued. The evidence seems to suggest that it was some kind of solvent-based adhesive. There is white residue on some of the strapping, the black fabric strapping inside. It seems to be a solvent-based glue. I use a straight solvent for a lot of my parts. When we come to do our first full assembly of a specific part, I will go into the technique in more detail, but you do need various brushes. These are just cheap brushes from the supermarket in various sizes, and they don't need to be particularly good quality or anything. These are a few different sizes for school kids, designed for school kids for painting. I'll be using those. This solvent, plastic weld, dissolves a thin film on each surface to be joined, then evaporates very quickly, forming a welded joint, as strong as the surrounding plastic. So essentially you're making one part out of two. You're not gluing it together. You're not gluing it together with a separate layer of adhesive. We'll go into that when we get there. I also have this E6000 glue. This seems to be from the USA, but you can get it on eBay in the UK, certainly in the EU, therefore. This you can actually use for the entire armor build. I have seen armors put together using just this and none of the welding. This has the benefit that it is more forgiving. It is a very, very strong industrial glue, but it takes a long time to cure, a very long time to cure, which can be a great advantage. When you're assembling your parts, you apply the glue. You have to leave it for quite a while before it reaches its full tackiness anyway. But once you've put the parts together, you then have quite a lot of opportunity to maneuver them into place. When you're working with something which is immediately permanent, like a weld, you don't have as much leeway or opportunity to adjust your fit. So This is good. You can use this for the entire build, as I say. It will stand up to the rigours of trooping. You can wear your armour and it will hold it with a fantastic bond, and it also has the added advantage of you can take it apart completely, even though it produces this bond. It's quite remarkable stuff. It won't come apart from impacts and from shocks, but you can pretty much peel it apart with slow application of force if you are unsatisfied with your build. So it may be useful if you're building something for the first time. You may want to go this route. Be a bit careful with your sizing, knowing that you can pull it apart and start again. I personally like to use this on the fabric parts that I attach to the armour. It's great for connecting fabric strapping to the plastic. On the inside of the thigh, for instance, there is a thick strip of black elastic. I like to use the E6000 to adhere the strapping on the inside of there, which then connects the thigh pieces to the belt. It provides a great bond, and it can even be peeled off later. It's really quite remarkable stuff. I also have here some super glue. This is in gel form. This is I find the gel form a bit more easy to apply than in the pure liquid form. This is the instant glue that will form a strong bond quickly within 10 seconds. I use this for various things, quite often for when I'm assembling a part. I've got them positioned right and got my sizing right. I'm ready to form a permanent bond. I'll quite often use a few spots of this in various areas to provide to make a provisional bond, a provisional hole, before I then typically go in with something like this, like the plastic weld. I've also seen complete suits of armour built entirely with super glue, Loctite super glue gel. I believe it works. I've never done it myself. I imagine it can get very expensive very quickly because this is not cheap, and imagine using it on an entire kit. Never tried it, but I have definitely seen it done. There are certain plastics which will not work with plastic weld. That's an important point. If you have ordered a kit which is PVC will not work. Plastic weld, this type of plastic weld will not work on PVC, so you're going to need to use E6000 or maybe even super glue. At some point during the build, we're probably going to be needing a hammer. We need to hammer in various rivets and bits of hardware on the suit. We'll come to that when we come to final assembly of the parts. At some point we will need to apply rivets, so we need this rivet application tool, rivet gun, or whatever you want to call it, pop rivets. So we're applying pop rivets. At the latest, when we come round to assembling the helmet, there are two either side of the helmet. As I say, when we get round to assembling individual parts, specific parts, I will do another quick overview of the tools. I will introduce all the tools we will be using. You will of course see what tools I use as we go along. That for now is probably enough to get you started. As I said, the next stage is trimming. The next video is going to be, we're going to start trimming and looking at trimming itself. Depending on when you are watching, that video may also now be available. It's the next in my schedule, definitely. But for this video, that was everything. I hope it was interesting and useful to you. If so, please do like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to receive notifications every time I upload something new, click on the bell icon. Thank you for joining me, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.